In this video, I'm going to be sharing with you 5 of my personal jazz guitar album recommendations. Let's get into it. Hey everybody, this is Jamie Holroyd helping you learn jazz guitar. Welcome to the channel. In this video, I'd like to share with you 5 of my personal jazz guitar album recommendations. This is a follow-up video to an earlier entry which I did, Essential Jazz Guitar Albums. If you missed that one, I've included a link in the description box below. Narrowing down a few albums is always a challenging thing, so I actually give myself a timeline here of the 1950s, 60s and 70s to work with. If you'd like to see more videos like this where I maybe talk about some modern jazz guitar albums, I'm happy to do that. Let me know in the comment section below. After compiling this list, I actually realised that each of the albums represents a classic jazz guitar. There's an example of a 175, an ES 150, an ES 330, so if you're looking to hear the sound of some classic jazz guitars, it's a great album list to check out. Let's begin by checking out For Django by Joe Pass, released in 1964. As you probably guessed from the title, For Django was written as a tribute to Django Reinhardt, who was one of Joe Pass's early musical influences. For Django contains a mix of both Joe's original compositions dedicated to Django as well as a few standards. Lineup wise, you've got Joe on lead guitar, John Pisano on rhythm guitar, and these are backed up by bass and drums. Joe is the only soloist on the record, so you get to hear him in full force here. This, along with his other early recordings like Catch Me and Joy Spring, are completely different from the works that Joe is most famous for, like Virtuoso. For Django is one of my favourite examples of the ES 175. The sound, in my opinion, is less throaty than something like an L5 that has a bit more bite to it as well. If you haven't heard this record by Joe, then I highly recommend you go and check it out. The next album on the list is El Hombre by Pat Martino. El Hombre was Pat Martino's debut recording as a leader, which he made when he was only 22 years old. If you're a guitarist and you can only listen to one track on this, then check out Just Friends. Countless jazz guitar players have transcribed and learnt this solo, and for good reason. I don't want to say any more. If you haven't checked that one out already, stop the video and go listen to it. Guitar wise, Pat Martino used a Gibson L5 to record El Hombre. However, he actually stuffed the F-holes to stop any feedback from occurring while he was recording. If you've ever seen an organ group or played with one, you'll know that things can get pretty loud, so having somewhere to stop the feedback from an archtop is essential. The next record on the list is called Fallout by Terry Smith, and it was released in 1968. Terry Smith is an English guitar player, mostly known for playing with the jazz rock group If. Besides that, he recorded one album as a leader in the late 60s called Fallout. This album shows his Wes Montgomery and Grant Green influence. He basically sounds like a tasteful blend of both of these jazz guitar players together. There's some small group tracks where he's playing with an organ player, and some tracks where he's actually playing with a big band, which remind me of the Wes Montgomery recording he did with a big band as well. Back then, Terry Smith played a Gibson ES 330, which you're going to hear in all the takes on the record. The P90s give this sound a distinctive tone, which is certainly different from the L5 and the 175 mentioned earlier on the list. The most famous Gibson 330 players are probably Emily Remler and Grant Green. While they are both great names, I often think that Terry gets overlooked. I'm sure that most of you watching this have not heard of him before, so that's one reason why you should check it out, and I think that after listening to it, you'll agree with me that Terry definitely deserves to be a better known ES 330 player. The next album is a compilation album called Remembering Rene and features the Belgian jazz guitar player Rene Thomas. This compilation album features some of Rene's best work as a leader and as a sideman between the years 1955 and 1962. You get to hear Rene playing trio form, quartet form, with an organ trio, Jimmy Smith's organ trio. It's an absolute must for any jazz guitar enthusiast. Guitar wise, Rene is mostly known as a Gibson ES 150 player, which you can hear on most of the tracks. However, there are 2 tracks on the second CD which you can hear Rene firstly play a Strat, specifically Quinton Warren's Fender Strat, and also an acoustic guitar. Italian suits and thick rimmed glasses were more in keeping with that an accountant or a banker back then, but don't let his appearance fool you. Rene Thomas lived and embodied the jazz musician lifestyle and virtuosity to the full. Check this compilation out, you won't be disappointed. The next record is called Pure Desmond by Paul Desmond. It was released in 1974 and features Ed Bickert on the guitar. This album to me defies the sound of cool jazz. You've got the relaxed alto playing of Paul Desmond, who played with the Dave Brubeck Quartet, married beautifully with Ed Bickert's warm pianistic jazz guitar playing. You couldn't ask for a better mix. If you don't know the story, Paul Desmond used to record and play with the late great jazz guitar player Jim Hall. They recorded a few albums together, which are well worth checking out if you haven't done so already. Chief among them is Take 10. For some reason, Jim Hall couldn't make a gig, so he recommended Ed Bickert. Paul Desmond liked Ed Bickert's playing so much that Ed Bickert became a permanent member in Paul Desmond's band. In an interview with Ed Bickert, he says that there really wasn't much rehearsals between the musicians. Basically, Paul Desmond would say something about a certain song in a certain key and they go from there. I love this attitude to the music, and you can hear this in the album. Things are really laid back, and both Ed Bickert and Paul Desmond are backed up by a top-notch jazz rhythm section featuring Connie Smith on drums and Ron Carter on upright bass. Guitar-wise, Ed Bickert used his beaten-up Fender Telecaster to record this album. I'm not sure if it was the model with the humbucker or the single coil, but Ed seemed to sound the same, whichever pickup he used. So that concludes our list on my favourite essential jazz guitar albums from the 1950s, 60s and 70s. But what I want to know is, what is your favourite jazz guitar album from this period? What have I overlooked? What have I missed out? Please let me know in the comment section below. I'd love to know what you think. And of course, if you did enjoy this video, then please like and subscribe to this channel. That way you're going to get all the future notifications as to what jazz guitar videos I offer.